All right, well, hopefully you found that cute and informative. That baby really calmed down just as soon as mom started talking. Now, with regard to taste, they've discovered that babies prefer sweet, which is probably not super surprising because children like sweet. Maybe a little bit more surprising is that they like salty. But if you think about it, babies evolved to nurse, and think about the history of humanity. There wasn't always a lot of showering and bathing going on, and so it might not be that surprising that mom might taste salty, right, with sweat. And mom milk is very sweet. If you've ever had the chance to taste mom milk, it is sweeter than cow milk, which is quite sweet. Some people compare it to like cantaloupe juice, like very sweet and sticky, full of sugar, full of lactose. And so it's very much not surprising that babies prefer sweet. So put those two things together, it makes a lot of sense. What they hate is bitter. If you put even a hint of bitter on a newborn tongue, they will recoil like like you're killing them. Sour is more preferred over bitter, but they don't really like sour either. They don't care for sour. They hate bitter. And then finally, smell. They can recognize their own mother by her scent. In fact, some babies will calm down if they have mom's shirt that she wore today, sort of cuddled up around them. If you put a baby down on the crib and you put on one side a breast pad that's been absorbing mom's colostrum or breast milk, and then you put a breast pad from another woman that the baby is not, around, the baby will turn their head towards mom's breast pad and leave it there. They clearly recognize their own mom's smell and they turn towards it. Now, some people mistakenly think that they picked up mom's smell in the womb. But I just want to remind you that the baby was in its own little capsule inside of mom. And so the amniotic sac is made out of baby DNA. The fluid that the baby's floating in is made out of baby DNA. Like all of that is baby DNA. And so the baby meets mom's smell at birth and immediately imprints on mom. So when she holds him up and does, skin to skin contact, they're exchanging smells. Now, something that's not even addressed in our textbook, but I think is a really important thing to throw in here, is that moms, during the first hour after birth, encode their baby's smell, and it takes 3 hours minimum interaction with their baby for them to encode what their baby actually looks like. But by smell, they can recognize their own baby from an array of 6 babies. They have the babies wearing little t-shirts. They take them off, put them into Ziploc baggies. Mom smells each Ziploc baggie one after the next. And moms can recognize their own baby's t-shirts from an array of 6 to choose from, which is pretty darn good because 1 out of 6, you have like an 18% chance of doing it correctly by accident, just by chance. And so this implies that moms honestly are recognizing their babies by smell. Meanwhile, you give them an array of 6 pictures to look at, one of which is their own baby, and they are working exactly at chance. And so until they've had a good solid 3 hours to interact with their newborn. So it really implies that during that first skin-to-skin contact that moms and babies oftentimes share after birth, that they're exchanging information about smell and they're imprinting on each other. And that sounds very, throwback to what other animals do, but it is a very throwback moment in life. When a mom gives birth to a baby, it becomes a very basic relationship between the mom and the baby. So it's an important thing, I think, to throw in that research. So during this newborn period, the states of consciousness that babies go through are different from what we're going to see in later infants and for sure, in older childhood and into adulthood. So babies operate on what we call an ultradian rhythm. You might be familiar with the word circadian rhythm, which means about a day. Ultradian means that the cycle occurs many times during the day. If you have a cat or a dog, they work on ultradian rhythms also. They have many sleep-wake cycles during the daytime. Us adult humans, we typically operate on a circadian rhythm where we have a big block of sleep and a big block of awake. And maybe you take a nap or not, but it's not a full sleep cycle. So you're probably working on a circadian rhythm, whereas babies and cats and dogs, they operate on this ultradian rhythm. The cycles are about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So what occurs during this ultradian rhythm? Well, deep sleep. Then they transition into a little bit lighter sleep. So you hear them and they're going as they're getting ready to wake up. Now they start to fuss. So you'll come get them. Then they move into clear hunger where they're smacking their lips. They've got their hands clenched in a little fist. They're rooting around trying to find a nipple. Once they've eaten, now they enter into an alert wakefulness period of now you can engage with them. You can look at them. You can talk to them. Not that they can answer, but you can start to, have that kind of one-sided conversation that we have with babies. And then they very quickly transition back into, that's it, I'm back to sleep. I'm dead again. And then they'll go through that many times. And it's kind of hard on new parents because, you're feeding that baby basically every hour and a half. Newborns are not very good nursers. And so they might be nursing for 45 minutes and then they finally fall back asleep. And then 45 minutes later, they want to eat again because it's been actually an hour and a half since they were eating last, since they started to eat. So it takes 45 minutes and then it takes another 45 minutes to get back to where your starting point is. So it can be very exhausting, but the good news is it very quickly starts expanding out so that you go from 1.5 hour cycles to 2 hour cycles to 2.5 hour cycles. So it starts expanding out and they might even, make you super happy and go for like a 4 hour period in the middle of the night where they actually sleep and don't have to feed in the middle of it. And so it goes pretty quickly, but in that, week 4 to 6, you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't get some sleep, I don't know what's going to happen. But the good news is they do transition reasonably quickly. So let's talk a little bit about sleep. When they're first born, for sure, they have no concept of night versus day. And in fact, as I'm recording this, I'm expecting my 3rd grandchild any day now. Literally, we've gotten to the point where it could be born any day now. And my daughter is required to update me and my mom about, what has happened over the night. Have you had any Braxton Hicks? What's going on? And one of her most recent ones was saying that, man, every time I lay down to go to sleep is when it starts roiling around, she calls it, kicking, doing a little dance party in there. And that's very typical for late term babies to, as soon as mom sits still, that's when they wake up. And so here she is, she finally lays down to go to sleep at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. And it thinks now it's time to wake up. And I call it it because it's her 3rd child. She already has a boy and a girl. So she's like, I don't know. I don't want to find out what it is. It doesn't matter. So I'm calling it an it for now. And we'll find out in a couple weeks. But when it comes out, it's going to continue to think that that's what time is time, wake up time. And it's one thing to have a roiling around belly. It's another thing to have an actually crying baby or a baby who needs something. It's an entirely different thing. So it's very difficult, but the good news again is that it doesn't take many weeks before they start figuring out that the house is quiet, it's dark for this big block of time in the middle of the night. This would be a good time to just go ahead and sleep for 4 hours at a stretch or something. So it doesn't take long for them to start getting at least a little bit of a sense of night. Now, typically babies during the newborn period, especially towards the beginning, they're going to be sleeping cumulatively 15 to 16 hours per day, which is about 2/3 of the day. Unfortunately, they're doing it in small bits. So they're getting, 45 minutes here, maybe an hour there, maybe 30 minutes there. So one of the things that moms are always told is you should take a nap whenever the baby takes a nap. And it's really good advice if you can do it, right? Because that baby is not going to do blocks of sleep. It's going to do these little tiny bits. And so if you want to get any rest, you probably need to sleep when the baby sleeps. The more kids you already have, the harder that's going to be. That's for sure. We know that newborn babies experience Rem sleep, which is where their eyes are darting back and forth. And in us adults, and even with children, if we wake them up or wake you up during Rem sleep, you'll typically report a dream. So when we see it in a newborn, we wonder, are they dreaming? We don't know. We have no idea what's going on inside of their heads, but they may be experiencing some kind of dream. Right? And sometimes as they get a little bit older, you might see reflexive smiles during their REM sleep, or you might see reflexive grimaces during their REM sleep, which kind of makes it seem like they might be dreaming and reacting to it. But we really don't know. And in fact, honestly, they it displayed REM sleep when they were in the womb also. We have ultrasound evidence that babies in the womb experience REM sleep. So REM is something very basic to their cognitive development, we think. We know that in adults that if you're deprived of REM sleep, it'll interfere with your memory formation. So we're thinking that it probably serves some kind of similar function for babies as well. They'll start to move into their circadian rhythm at about 6 weeks. I think that's optimistic. Honestly, my babies, I was happy if I was getting 5 solid hours of sleep at night. I wouldn't call that a circadian rhythm. I'm a 8 to 9 hour kind of gal normally. So for them to be doing 5 hours did not feel like a full circadian rhythm. But, they might go to sleep at midnight and then wake up at 5 with dawn. They might be like, okay, I'm up and I'm awake. And they're like acutely awake. It's not like you could rock them back. They are acutely awake. They want to be fed. They want to engage with you for a little while. Well, by now you're up. So they may begin to consolidate more of their sleep into nighttime and less of their sleep during the daytime, but it's going to be a long process. It's not uncommon for babies well into their, second half of their first year to still be, taking longer naps during the naps during the day, stuff like that, which is still a little ultradian. All right, well, I've been talking long enough. I'm going to let this nice lady explain to you the different cry sounds. And she does a really good job of explaining the different kinds of cries and what they sound like and what they mean. So I'll let her do this explanation.